The concept that I want to really frame my comments around this afternoon the concept, the term is redefinition. We met with self-advocates just afternoon for almost 2 hours, phenomenal time, and ended with cake, which was wonderful. The term that kept coming to mind yesterday afternoon was redefinition. And as I sat there and listened to the pride of the surveyors and how competent they felt they were and how significant they felt their contribution was, redefinition came to mind. Think how their lives have been redefined by their involvement. But more generally speaking, think how your clients' lives have been redefined from the movement, from the institution into the community. And that's happening everywhere in terms of organizations. My experience is that organizations are redefining themselves all over the world. And I think there are probably at least 4 reasons for this redefinition. One reason is what we call the ecological model of disability, where we focus now not just on the defect of the individual, but more importantly the interaction between the individual's capabilities and the environment's requirements and the environment's support. And that ecological model of disability, I think, has revolutionized how organizations think about what their responsibility is, what their definition is. Because now we look at not just what we as an organization do in terms of providing supports or services to people with a defect, but we look beyond ourselves and think, how can we access more community resources, etc., to really impact that environment. So that ecological model has had a tremendous impact on how organizations truly throughout the world are redefining themselves. The second concept that is really impacting that redefinition process is the quality of life concept. And that is really becoming a systems change concept. We talked about this morning, and certainly when you look at your data and when you talk to people who are using that kind of information for redefining what they do, it's had a tremendous impact. The third concept is the supports paradigm. And I'll put all this together, by the way, in either 1, 2, or 3 slides, whichever emerges best. The supports paradigm has really revolutionized how we think about what we as an agency do. Because no longer do we simply provide services to people, professional services. We no longer do that exclusively. Professional services are a part of a broader system of supports. But the fourth concept is one that is equally powerful in many respects. It's the whole movement towards more accountability and transparency in what we do. And that's happening everywhere as well. We as service providers, we as public servants are being held accountable. Not just for what we do, but what is the impact of what we do, i.e. what are the outcomes of what we do. And so consequently that accountability issue is such a strong one. But what is so critical in terms of accountability and this project is it's a very transparent process. So anyway, those are the 4 concepts that really have led organizations everywhere to begin to, or to continue to, redefine themselves. Now, let's think about what are the characteristics of a redefined organization. Now we're going to jump up that 5-year period. What are you going to look like in 5 years? And you'll be around in 5 years. And that's called sustainability. One thing that you'll be, I'm sure, will be support coordinators. In other words, your focus is going to continue to move outside of the walls or the physical plant where you are. And you're going to be coordinating this system of supports that we'll go through in a few minutes. Secondly, you're probably going to increasingly become more of a bridge to the community. Your role will become less important in many respects, and the community's role is going to become greater. Now there's a little bit of hope there, because sometimes communities are not the most receptive places in the world for our folks. But nevertheless, we'll never do what we want to do in terms of enhancing people's quality of life if we don't move into the community. Because where you and I experience our community, where you and I experience our quality of life is in the community. It's not in a facility. And that's equally true for our clientele. Third, you're going to increasingly become a knowledge producer. And that's a fascinating part of this redefinition process. Because what's happening is, as tools are being developed, then people are now in a position to begin asking questions like, if we have outcomes for people, then what do we do that impacts those outcomes? That is, you produce knowledge. And one of the fascinating things that will happen as you pull all the 7 groups together is you're going to become partners, you're going to become information sharers, and you're going to consistently look for how can we produce more knowledge as a group. So it's an interesting role reversal, because historically, you as an agency, and I'm speaking generically here, have always sought information. You've sought the expert's advice, right? You've asked for expert opinions, and you brought in experts for various things. But what's going to happen is you're going to become the experts. It's just like the surveyors yesterday. They're the experts. Fourth, and maybe equally important, you're going to be increasingly concerned about what are evidence-based practices and what are evidence-based outcomes. We've gone beyond standards. We haven't replaced standards, and we never will, we should. But we realize increasingly that standards are not necessarily the producers of outcomes. Standards are what professionals live by in terms of the code of ethics. And what are good practices are now being defined in terms of what does the evidence suggest is the result of using this particular practice. But increasingly, and here's where we've come to in this project, we can now talk about evidence-based outcomes. And that's a new thing. And so those trends that I talked about, those 4 trends and these characteristics, I am reasonably comfortable in saying 5 years down the road, you're going to be increasingly these 4 things.